November 17th, last year, as we were planning the December event, I get an email. It says, "Dear Deborah, I just received ICT's email on the Beyond the Basics. I love the work ICT is doing. I was just trying to figure out how to scrape together the registration fee and realized the event is in Boston, not DC. I'd love to learn more. We need you here. Please see my website, 55 and Faking Normal, which speaks to the millions of boomer-age Americans who have been underfunded in their retirement and are facing a work-for-life proposition. Elizabeth Diane White." I respond, "Elizabeth, thanks for writing. The phrase, faking normal, says it all. Do you have time to connect?" And so starts the relationship between ICT, me, and Elizabeth. Over the course of the past year, I've gotten to know Elizabeth. She's been an inspiration to me. She's been a thought partner to me, a friend, and I will say one of the very few people in my life, in fact I can count 3, where it's okay to open my kimono. Aww. What a gift. Those of you that know Harvard professor Rosabeth Moss Kanter might be familiar with the Kanter law. Do you know that one, Sarah?
No, I don't, but I did meet her many, many years ago.
Yes, one of my favorites. So Kanter's law says, everything looks like failure in the middle. Everyone loves inspiring beginnings and happy endings. It's just the middles that involve hard work. So Elizabeth is here today to share her story and to speak her truth from the middle, or in sitcom language, from the muddle. And like all of you in this room, she's educated, she's talented, she has a track record of success, and yet is faking normal. So here to give voice to the 1,000 of us that have this problem, that's become invisible and often denied as an issue that we need to deal with as a society. With her kimono open and my kimono open, please help me welcome Elizabeth to Boston.
Let me just start by talking about the top this exercise that you just did. That's actually inspired by something I would do with a friend of mine in my resilience circle. Except our top this was the Crisis Sweepstakes. Our top this would be, my phone's about to be disconnected. She'd say, my water's turned off, and she would win. Okay, that's what we would do. And that would help us to have some place where you could go and tell the truth. A year ago, I was here. I'm amazed that you found that email. A year ago, I was here, and this process of finding people that you can connect with, this is an example of that. A year ago, this book is a week old. A year ago, this book was not in my mind. This was part of a process of feeling the frustration that many here feel, not being able to find a job despite, elitist credentials. I have a Harvard MBA, I have a master's in international studies, I've worked at the World Bank, all of this, and it just was not happening. So I wrote an essay out of my frustration, and that kind of started me on a journey. I'm going to read it to you now, because this, in a sense, was the beginning. You know her. She's in your friendship circle, hidden in plain sight. Her clothes are still impeccable, bought in the good years, when she was still making money. To look at her, you would not know that her electricity was cut off last week for non-payment, or that she meets the eligibility requirements for food stamps. But if you paid attention, you would see the sadness in her eyes, hear that grace note of fear in her otherwise commanding voice. These days, she buys the $1.99 trial-size jug of Tide to make ends meet. You didn't know laundry detergent came in that size. You invite her to the same expensive restaurants that the two of you have always enjoyed, but she orders mineral water now with a twist of lemon instead of the $12 glass of Chardonnay. She is frugal when making her menu choices, meticulous, counting every penny in her head. She demurs to dividing the table bill evenly to cover desserts, designer coffees, and second and third glasses of wine she did not consume. She's tired of trying to keep up appearances. Faking normal is wearing her out. There are no media stories about her. Her slide out of the middle class is not sensational enough. A friend says that she's broke, not poor, and there's a difference. She lives without cable, her gym membership, or nail appointments. She's discovered that she can do her own hair. She has no retirement savings, no nest egg. She exhausted that long ago. There's no expensive condo from which to draw equity and no husband to back her up. Months of slow pay and no pay have decimated her credit. Bill collectors call constantly, reading verbatim from a script, expressing polite sympathy for her plight before demanding payment arrangements she can't possibly meet. Friends wonder privately how someone so well educated could be in economic freefall. She's still as talented as ever and as smart as a whip, but work is sketchy now, mostly on and off consulting gigs. Friends hear about this and that assignment, but can't remember when she last had a real job. At 55, she has learned how to fake cheeriness and to appear engaged, but her phone doesn't ring with opportunities anymore. She doesn't remember exactly when it stopped, but she can't deny now having entered the uncertain world of formerly and used to be. In the face of mega generational shifts, she's not sure anymore where she belongs. What she does know is that dozens of online job applications seem to disappear into a black hole. She's convinced that employers have set their online job recruitment algorithms to reject anyone who graduated before 1995. She wonders what is to become of her. She's facing a work-for-life proposition. So far, her health has held up, but her body aches, or is it her spirit? Homeless women used to be invisible to her, but she appraises them now with curious eyes, wondering if their stories started like hers. I wrote this piece. I was sitting on my bed, talking to friends of mine, and it was a composite piece of our story. And I sent it to PBS's website called Next Avenue. And, you know, they're kind of like, do we publish this? Is this a short story? Is this a... And they decided to publish it. And they put it on their website, and in 3 days, it had 11,000 likes and 1,000 comments. And that said to me, there are a lot of us. There are a lot of us. And in those, and I had put my email, so hundreds of people started writing me their stories. And this is how this was born. This is how this was born. I wrote it because I wasn't seeing myself in the sort of popular media. Nobody I knew was buying a condo in Costa Rica. Nobody I knew was traveling the world. All of my friends, except the ones who worked in government, because I'm from DC, were facing this work-for-life proposition, where one event one medical diagnosis, one job loss, one your spouse gets up and leaves you. And we're talking about financial catastrophe, insolvency, ruin. And so I started to look at the numbers. And there are a couple statistics that really strike me. One is GAO did a study, and they looked at people 55 to 64. Well, 29% of us have not saved a dime. 29%, so almost a third. Then of the median retirement savings for 55 to 64 is $3,000, which sounds a lot better than zero until you look at the inflation protected annuity on that. You're talking about $300. Now, if you make it to 60 in reasonable health, with the longevity bonus we have now, advancements in medical treatment and technology, we're going to live another 25 years. $300 gets you nowhere when you're talking about 25 years. Even kick in the Social Security. Average Social Security is $1,300 if you get the average. For women, it's less. $1,600. You can't live on that. So when I started to think about this, started to read the stories, there were so many stories coming in, and I knew what was happening to me. And I knew if I have my props and credentials, and this is happening to me, then it's happening to a lot of other people. So I'm 62. And what I read you, that essay, that's a lot of my story. And it was not supposed to end up this way. In my 30s, I worked at the World Bank. Early on, I had a low six-figure income, bought a 2-story condo, had a nice ride, kind of all of that. Few years into the bank, I had a master's from Johns Hopkins School of Advanced International Studies coming in, so I had the credentials, all of that. To about 5 years into the World Bank, I decided that I was going to go back out and get an MBA, got a Harvard MBA, they paid for it, I mean, all of this. Caught the entrepreneurial bug, decided that I would start a chain of stores. Did that, had stores in 3 states in the District of Columbia. I was kind of going. I sold decorative home products that were African inspired. It did well, but sort of not well enough. It was, I had to take more than a 40% pay cut. It was humbling in the sense that at the World Bank, I was advising companies about how to run their business, even though I had never run one. You know how that goes, okay. Suddenly, I now have payroll. I now have a board that I'm interacting with. I'm now buying the inventory. I'm dealing with the customers. Much harder than just advising. So it went for sort of 10 years. We won awards. It did well enough, but it was hard scaling it. So in 2003, I was back now in the market. And kind of a good time to be in the market. You could get contracts. I got contracts. I got 2. One was supposed to be for 6 months, and it went for 7 years. Another one was supposed to be for 1 year, and it went for 4 years. So that was all, money was there, back in the 6-figure money. Life was good. And then the Great Recession hit. And as those companies had to retrench the first thing to go are the contract, all the consultants go. So I went from almost 200,000 a year to zero in 6 months. So you think, I got a little saved. I have this background. I will, do what I normally do, start working the traps. You call people in your network. And I'm just not getting the traction that I expected to get. It's not happening the way it used to happen. And and you're living sort of the way you're used to living, because this is going to happen in 2 months, right? 3 months at the outside, you'll get something like what you're used to getting. And you start going through your money. Now, I had already, since I had a business, used some of my money to keep the business going, make ends meet. But now you are just devouring your savings. Because by the time you finally do get something, you're so in the hole, you're paying back the 3 months of mortgage that you're now behind on, trying to catch up. So even though it's a nice check, it's gone in 2 weeks. You just can't get the traction again. So got back for a brief time where there was a regular job. So I got a C-suite job with an organization, loved it, and then it just didn't work out with me and my boss. And when your boss is the CEO and it doesn't work out with him, so then I'm, back out here again. And much harder now, because we're now post 2009. Everything has dried up. And even so, now you have people pushing back on your daily rate. Daily rate, I used to just get the daily rate. Now it's a negotiation. They don't want to pay the daily rate. Now contracts that used to be a certain length are now, half of what they used to be. Before, when they would allow you to maybe even stay in the company until they figured out the next thing, they don't do that anymore. So it just got much dicier. And it was sort of in that period that I wrote the essay that you read. And so without the, being now in the don't want you marketplace, don't want you, clear, and left my job. I was 58, 59, okay, at that time. And here's what you know. You can take, all the dates off your CV. You can put just the last 10 years. You can play all those tricks. When you go to fill out the application, it all comes roaring back. When did you graduate? Okay. You're just not going to be around it. And because everything now is algorithm driven, if someone does not personally on-ramp you, you are not going to kind of get into a system when you're in your mid-late 50s. It's just going to be very hard to do. So I had to then think about, what do I do now? So it became clear to me it was unlikely that I was going to get a 9-to-5 kind of job, W-2, big salary, that probably was not going to happen. And that the pathway for me was going to really be multiple income streams and trying to figure out, how do I cobble together something that's going to allow me to live? I also realized we're in a period that has never existed before. We are the first generation that's going to live until we're well into our 80s. Nobody knows what this means. So first is always hardest, because first is before there are rules, before there are role models, before there are legislation. There's nothing here. So we are making our path by walking. So I realized I have to live. So how do I figure out, if it's not going to be 9 to 5, what is it going to be? What are the buckets that I'm going to focus on? So I've always done Africa, long time. And I want to continue, but not in the way. Africa gets harder as you get older. And I didn't want to do it the way that I had done it before, where 1 month out of every 3 I was on the continent. I really wanted to work with people who had marginalized backgrounds and were trying to get connected to the workforce. And so I tried the whole reinvention thing that we hear everybody. The media likes those ones where the accountant becomes the pastry chef or the lawyer becomes the cabaret singer. That's not, when we talk about reinvention, that's not really what we mean. But even when you do it in a way that's more realistic. So I was trying to connect with organizations that did this work with marginalized, returning citizens. It was very hard for me to get in. I didn't have that background. And it was hard for me to sort of make the case for why they should hire me, not at a research assistant level, because that was the other thing that said they want to hire you, but like almost practically a volunteer. So, but I did get in around one of those adjunct instructors. Now, those jobs sound better than they are. Those jobs, this is peanuts, okay. But it allows me now to work with the population that I'm interested in. It's one of the buckets that will then hopefully allow me to start to get to the policy side where I'm interested in. So one bucket. So Africa's one, that's the other one, and then this work. So this, with the essay that I did, contacting ICT, and then starting a conversation with Deborah and Scott and Tom that helped to shape this. Them reading manuscripts, pushing back, asking me questions. Because I felt like I could not find the book that I wanted to read. All these books were too cheery. They're too cheery. This is not cheery. And I wanted to write a book that dealt with the emotional aspects of where we've landed. I wanted to write a book before you go to that Get Back on Track webinar that leaves you feeling worse than when you started, before you go to another stand around LinkedIn event that you're there wondering, you feel like you're face pressed against the glass looking at the normal people. There's a step before that. So this book is about that step before that. This book is, what helped me was a group of men and women that I could go to and tell the truth. That I could say, my phone's been disconnected. Because you know your ass is showing when your phone's disconnected. Okay. And they would remind me who I was, remind me what I know. Because in this process, it is crazy making if you're doing it alone. It is isolating. You will, I talk about in the book, there's one chapter that's just called Circling the Drain. And I talk about awfulizing. Awfulizing is your parade of horribles. It is when you have the interview, you don't hear back as soon as you thought, and now you're reacting to some imaginary future. they must have heard from my former boss and he badmouthed me. I'll never work. My spouse is going to leave me. I'm going to lose my house. And it just goes on. That's the awfulizing process. You can get caught in that if you don't have someone who can bring you back, remind you who you are, what you know, how good you are. You can just spiral kind of out of control. So the resilience circle is who Deborah is part now of my resilience circle. I can call her, tell her the truth about what's happening. She can call me and tell me the truth about what's happening. And that's then what would allow me to be able to do this. This book didn't exist a year ago. It wasn't there a year ago. So I want to talk about these pieces here. So with a book, you have to decide what's yours to do from where you sit. This that we're dealing with, someone could write a documentary. That's not mine to do. Somebody could decide they're going to lobby the Hill and our legislators. Big thing to do, not mine to do. Somebody could decide this needs a big muscular website. It's not been mine to do. You have to decide what's yours to do. And then you decide, well, what do I have to work with? So when I decided that I could write, I got a lot of positive feedback on this essay. I started writing other things. Forbes was picking them up. Okay, so I knew I could write. I knew that I could do the research. I have the background. I could do the research. I could interview people. Hundreds of people were writing me. And then I knew I could randomly reach out. Deborah was a random reach out. And where we now have relationship. We are close now. We support each other. But a year ago, it was just an email that I happened to see that I followed up on. Now, I follow up on other emails. It doesn't mean that every email you follow up on, you're going to get a response. But I am this bringing others along, figuring out, okay, what can you do? I knew I didn't have a lot of resources. So if it was going to take a lot of money to do it, that was going to be out. I had to look at what's my skill set, and what's my interest. It's hard to work on something if you're not interested. And then who else can I bring along? Who else is in this space that is thinking like I'm thinking? Because what I want is to move us from the sort of national la-la conversation we're having on retirement that focuses on Social Security, like Social Security is the answer. It's not nearly enough for people to live on. And it's, ridiculous when they even talk about cutting it further. So, and I wanted us to, part of what's happening, because we're silent, because there's shame, because we think what happened to us is our fault, then even though we're a big population, these numbers that I gave when I first started, that's tens of millions of people. Neil Gabler, earlier this year, wrote a piece for Atlantic where he looked at a Fed study that said 47% of Americans cannot pull together $400 for an emergency, okay? Think about what 47% means. 47% means every other person. It's almost half the population. But you can look good, drive good, smell good. I'm one of those who can't pull together the $400. You're not going to look at me and think that. And so as we're in the world, recognizing that we're not alone helps a lot in sort of how do you take the next step. When I was circling the drain myself, feeling like I was by myself, then this wouldn't have been possible. So it is really finding your tribe. In this room, there are people here you can connect with. You know, I hope out of this experience, some of you would do your own resilience circle. And the resilience circle this is just a start. It's then what else do you want to look at? What else do you want to explore? What other things might you want to pursue? But I thought my contribution can be speaking in our voice, because a lot of the people who do this have not experienced it. And so when I go to these panel discussions and I never get the urgency that is really here for us. And I feel that urgency because I live this. Okay. So I think I'm going to pause there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Elizabeth mentioned how periodically we connected on phone and on email. And as I listened to Elizabeth's story, I saw parts of my own story. But I was also remembered of the Just Start strategy. That she actually, for me, she brought it to life. That sense of using her means at hand, that she had skills in marketing, writing, and she started bringing other people along, and she was taking action. And as Elizabeth mentioned, on and off, and that's life. But clearly having that sense of that there's a problem out there that she was concerned about, and just finding her way. I don't know if anyone's familiar with the Search for the Holy Grail. One of the stories in that, the Knights of the Round Table are all in this dark forest, and it's all thick brush, and everyone has to go in on a different place and just find their way by walking. And again, I think this story resonates with many of us here. And so I'd invite you to just take a few moments with a partner and just share. When you heard Elizabeth's story and some of the other stories that we've shared today, what resonated with you? And in terms of that process of taking action with the means at hand, with acceptable loss, bringing others along, is there a place you get stuck? And share that with your partner. So let's take a few minutes, turn to your partner, and either share what really resonated with Elizabeth's story, or share in terms of where you get stuck, what that brought up for you and where you get stuck in that process.
I think if we as a group probably are all going to get the same thing, which is that just a symptom of people hiding behind the wall? There's no wall out there, so we don't get feedback because, let's face it, HR organizations are in place, not for the HR resources, they're there to protect the function. So that's my first question to you. I think that is all for you. My second question is, when do you know when? And Peter and I were talking about it a little earlier. At some point in your mindset, you decided this ain't working. I'm not going back to my old life. I've got to cobble together a solution set, which you've done. But for you, what was the hammer on the head, so to speak, that made it very clear my old life's gone. I've got to come together with some other set of solutions that gets me through the day, provides for the family, whatever.
So on the first one, we're not going to get feedback. Risk of lawsuit, all of that, we're not going to get feedback. Some of it is just rampant age discrimination, period. And no one's going to say that to us. Okay? It's just not going to happen. So once I get over the feedback thing, you're not going to get feedback. And someone was sharing that, no, this was yesterday actually, but the point is relevant here. Phone interview goes fantastically. Love the CV, invite her in, and the interview's over. in 30 minutes. Someone who wrote me, she said, I look like a middle-aged mom. That's how I look. I go in, no one thinks I can do cutting-edge technology. So I don't get hired, even though she can do cutting-edge technology. My father had this expression, that's a fact of life. When he would tell me that's a fact of life, that means you can't do anything about it. So the win is it 1,000 CVs, 100 CVs? Is it 50 not called back? Is it, 25 you go in and suddenly you get that really cool sort of reception? It's your tolerance level for this is not working. And it is, you've done what they told you to do. You updated your CV, you bought the new sports jacket, you gained weight or lost weight, you did all of it. You seminars, conferences, workshops, all of it, career coaching, and the reaction that you're getting is more or less the same. A few will punch through and get that long bread, W-2 form, good job that they used to get. But those are outliers. That's not really what's happening. So 25 years, we've got 30 years on this track. You have to start thinking about, okay, how am I going to make this work? And one of the things I think we have to really think about is, can we have a textured, meaningful, satisfying life on a much more modest income? What's that going to look like? And that means that some things we have done rotely, impulse purchases, $5, $50, $500, no more. It means really thinking about what matters now for your life to have the meaning that you need it to have. Now, it could be, I have friends who are foodies. They still want to be able to eat in restaurants, but they go during the happy hour. Or they share an entree. They share the entree. Right. Because that's what matters to them. I have a friend who he could care less about a car. His cars are, it's like Fred Flintstone. You're in the car, starting the car like this. But flute, now he'll spend $17,000 on a flute. He will save for 15 months because that is what matters to him. So we're at a point where we can't do the rote impulse purchase, the $39 t-shirt, all of this. We have to now start thinking, if it's going to be, if we're boiling it down, what do I need to be happy? So my circle of, my sister girls, my tight women friends, we don't do the restaurants. Occasionally we go. We get some $7 bottles from Trader Joe's. We go to somebody's house. Somebody brings a rotisserie chicken. Somebody makes a salad, and we sit, and it is still magical. I call that the smalling up. In the book, I talk about, I was invited to a destination wedding last year. This is in Savannah. And this is a friend of mine. If you did not, she was getting married for the first time at 50. If you, or almost 50, if you did not make this wedding, it's going to be a problem for the friendship. I did not have the money to go to Savannah, stay in the destination hotel. So one of my faking normal women friends, who was also invited, we decided we would drive in her jalopy down to Savannah. It was like 10 hours. We did not stay in the destination hotel. We stayed in a hotel that was a little bit, it was above a Motel 6, but below a Holiday Inn. You guys are both tight. Now this is where your breakfast is eggs under a heat lamp. It is orange juice from a concentrate on a paper plate. Okay. And I met with my friend. We weren't in the highbrow, the artists, lofts, and all of that in Savannah, but I could have a $5 coffee there with my good friends. So a woman was in town, dear to me, from Ghana. We parked in one of those cafes for 3 hours with our $5 coffee. It was still magical. I didn't buy a dress. I would normally, a wedding like this, buy a dress. I shopped in my closet, found something. The whole weekend cost me $200 because we drove down all night. So that was one less night in the hotel. We stayed in this little place that I told you about next to the car dealerships and the Waffle Houses is where we were. But I was at the wedding of someone I love. It was important to her. I could be there. I got to see friends. It was still magical. So the smalling up was, do I not go to the wedding because I don't have a dress and I can't fly and I can't stay in the destination hotel? Or what's important? Being at the wedding to support her and there. And so that's that. So we all have our version of that you have to think about. How do I do this in a way that I can do it? The hardest part for me has been coming out with the truth. Okay. Because people, you will tell them, I really can't afford that. They nod. And then the next time they see you, they're inviting you back again to the same place, the same event that you can't do. And there's a lot of pressure to seem like you can afford it. And just getting blunter with people. Good friend, dear to me, I had suggested a national chain for us to go and get a bite. The text says, HMMM. Do you think we could go somewhere else? This means I don't eat at those places. That was the translation. So I'm like, okay, so I know at this particular place she's suggesting I can cobble together something that's within my budget. So I'm telling her I'm running late, and she says, oh, they have valet parking at $15 a pop. So, and she is sensitive, thoughtful. I love her. I care about her. She cares about me. But you are going to have people in your life, they're not going to get it. And so bringing them to awareness, being able to stand in the space of when, okay, being able to stand in the space of truth, you'll know when it is. You'll know what your pain point is. Okay.
You mentioned very quickly about policy, and our stories are almost identical. I just got my master's last year in public policy, and that's my thing right now. You had to see the story. I want to do something similar, like I like to do some writing, but I also, when you talked about the numbers, and you mentioned also about we're silent, my thing has always been that we're not counted. I don't know about the rest of you, but a lot of us who have left our jobs, like for example, when I left my job at the height of the recession, I was forced out. I didn't volunteer to leave. So but I still couldn't collect unemployment. And the way that the government counts how many people are out of work is if you collect unemployment. But I've never collected unemployment. I've been unemployed for over 4 years, exactly 4 years and 4 months. I haven't collected unemployment. So my main thing that I'm angry about is that we're not counted. So in addition for our special age group, the baby boomers who are now, so a lot of us, they're counting us as like leaving the workforce, we're not looking for a job. So that in itself. So So I was going to ask you, I know I haven't seen your book, but I know it seems like you did some research, obviously, and you have some numbers. So I don't know if you have numbers, which with my public policy classes, the only number you can get for unemployment at this point is people who collect unemployment. But did you come across anything that gives some semblance of the rest of the people who are unemployed but are not counted?
Yeah, there are numbers. Do you want to comment to what she said?
So if you in Massachusetts use any of the career places and you're not in the bucket, you have to use your social security and not name to get in. So they sift out. Those are the unemployed people who are coming here to use our services because they're required to. And then there's this whole big job search cadre of people that are coming to use our services. So they know we exist in the Massachusetts database. And recently they were also collecting data on underemployed for the survival job type things people are doing. So I think they are collecting more relevant data, but whether it's leading to interventions or solutions that are appropriate, that's a whole nother discussion.
But I appreciate it.
Yeah, and there are some numbers in the book about the number of people who have stopped looking.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
My question is about my experiences as a man. I don't know if this is in the book, but for many men, and I'm thinking of my siblings, my brothers-in-law, they're all nice people, but at some level, for a man at least, you are what you are. And they don't have to know exactly, because men never talk about their men would talk more about their sex lives than they would ever say, unless they're thinking so much that they can boast. But we keep it very private about that. But even the relatives really care about me. I'm uncomfortable talking about my work situation, and there's a lot of shame in that, because they're not going to quite get why. I mean, I'm a Harvard graduate, I have a master's degree. Don't have as much, you're out degreeing me, but still, I've got enough of that, of that good start, that family members will look at me and what is wrong with you that you can't find a job or a job that you like? And there's this huge amount of shame involved, and I have a very supportive, understanding wife, but she's never experienced unemployment life. She's been happily working for the last 30 years and steadily going up in her career. So I'm never convinced she gets quite what it feels like to be a man at 55, unemployed, happily 55. And no matter how much supportive she is, no matter how much we can come up with schemes where we do savings and borrow money, whatever, still the fact that I'm not gainfully employed and making a decent amount of money, even if we could survive without it, it's a tremendous hit at my masculinity, and there's a huge amount of shame involved, and it's very hard for people to get that.
So first, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, for sharing that. I would say in the book, you read Bruce's story. That's one thing. And this is what I have found. I heard from many more women. Women, we can sit next to each other on a plane for a couple hours and just really get a rhythm going, talk candidly. Men, much harder. So I didn't, so when I loved Bruce's story, because he speaks about what you just said briefly in 3 dimensions. And after having a really solid career, he talks about the emotional piece of what happened. And similar to you, his wife is fine, which is what allows his lifestyle to continue as it is. But just the, in a kind of graphic, honest way about the truth of what you've said. I think because we don't hear that story, again, we think it's not many men It's a lot of men. The numbers, when 50% of households cannot pull together $1,000, we're talking about a lot of people. Until we start standing in it and telling the truth, it means some of the people you think are judging you are actually in the situation. It can't be 47% and 50%, but everybody you know is fine. And my best friend's, serious six-figure income, doing really, really well, her 55-year-old sister is living in her basement with her 18-year-old daughter, okay? Because she lost her house, da-da-da-da. So everybody, you can't be at 47, 50% of households and not have it touching. If it's not you, it's someone you know. But if we all hide, nobody tells the truth, if we all fake normal, then there's no permission to come out. We're going to feel alone because we're not telling people what's really happening. And I say, you don't sort of open your kimono like this to start. You a little bit to start, where your goal is moving towards truth.